Excuse is that this is going to be a nightmare. Well, we're not hoping for a nightmare, we're hoping for plenty of dreams for all of these drivers here. Talking of dreams, this night race at Singapore is underway, and it looks like Fairley's had a good start in front. And yeah, very good start in fact. Ross is looking down the inside of Prev to try and get up into third. Now has the inside line for turn 3 and gets that move done. Padge is also looking for a move on Wiggles perhaps, or just defending from Dr. Edward. That guy is past Kemments and up into 8th place. We've got AJ, Sam and Hyper at the back going very closely through turn 4 and 5. All in all, drivers behaving themselves. Pass running wide of Dayman in the background. May have got a warning for that, but thankfully the wall out there is very away from the curb. Wiggles following Prev with great intensity here. Prev has dropped back already to beyond that second for DRS activation, which of course won't be activated until lap 3. So right now it's just, can the drivers use their ERS and their skills to get past the driver in front. Hyper has now got past AJ Sam, and there's also an incident between the two. I wonder what's going on there. AJ Sam running a little bit wide here, may have damage and an increased level of understeer on his car. I have to see if he comes into the pits at all. Out in front, Fairley leads. His teammate in second place. Ross up into third. Said his race pace is better than his quali pace. And it looks like Ross is sticking to the back of that Mercedes like glue in this opening lap and a bit. Dayman is past Maverick for 10th place. And neither of the pair of Sam and Hyper have pitted, so I don't think any damage, maybe just a bit of a little incident happening there. Midway through the first lap. We've got Padge defending from quite a few drivers behind. We've got Dr. Edward, that guy, and Kemments, all looking to improve on their position early in the race. However, there's still plenty of laps left, so none of these drivers need to go for any silly move. A bit of understeer perhaps to Padge through the hairpin, coming out of the hairpin. Dr. Edward with a little bit of oversteer. Does well to stay ahead of the Aston Martin behind. Amos Fairley leads his teammate by 2 seconds now as they go into sector 3, and when they cross the line, DRS will be enabled. Hyper has dropped back a little bit, and Sam even further still, so them two may be having a little bit of a fight going on. Fairley sets a new fastest lap of the race. DRS is enabled, as we know, and it won't be too long until people can start using DRS. Sam is past Hyper, and there's a yellow flag in sector 3 as Hyper is off. No virtual safety car or full safety car, but Hyper may have some damage going on. Have to wait and see. Ross getting very close to the back of Connor. AJ Sam pits. Likewise does Hyper. So perhaps some damage for the pair of them. And both onto a new set of medium tyres. Rev defending Wiggles. Wiggles will have DRS, getting very close in the hairpin. Rev gets a nice exit. Should stay ahead on this occasion. On this track, it's not too much about raw pace. It's more about racecraft more than anything else. Can you keep it out of the barriers for 31 laps? Can you avoid getting any unnecessary time penalties? Hyper has retired and he's crashed on the Anderson Bridge, and there is a full course safety car. Didn't take long. I guess there's not many surprises there, but on lap 4 of 31, full course safety car. I don't think we'll see too many people into the pits this time around. I don't expect the hard tyres to last the rest of these remaining 27 laps. So I think drivers may go for a pit and try and go for a stint on the soft tyres at the end perhaps, but Fairley indeed does kind of prove my point there by staying out. Connor and Ross also staying out. Wiggles is past Prev, and that is because Prev has decided to pit. Thinks, I don't want these soft tyres for very long. Dr. Edward also takes this opportunity to pit. Dayman into the pits and gets a 5-second penalty for speeding. Maverick also pitting. And all 4 of those pit stops have led to a new set of medium tyres. So there isn't an outright tyre advantage for any one person. I mean, sure, the people who have just pitted will have better tyre conditions, but those top 6 won't exactly be on really old tyres, so we shouldn't see too much of a disadvantage for any driver. Safety car is in this lap. AJ Sam catching up to the back of the pack. And that is plenty of notice for AMS Fairley and the rest of the drivers here this evening. Plenty of notice for Fairley. The slower he goes now, the more he can surprise his teammate when he does decide to restart this race. Safety car now approaching the last corner where he will duck into the pits. In he goes, and there Fairley goes. Nice restart around the final corner to restart this race on lap 7. And Ross is definitely loving this safety car restart. He has got a really good exit off the final corner and is past Connor now into second. And Connor now finds himself defending from Wiggles. A really good restart here from our featured driver Ross. We've also got Prev and Kemments going side by side down the front straight. Prev getting the better of Kemments here, up into 6th place, using those new tyres to good advantage. Let's not forget Prev has good pace in his own right. That guy in 5th is next on Prev's hit list from, I think, the Aston Martin of that guy. Could have been Wiggles in front. Mr. Wiggles, 3-second time penalty through turns 17 and 18. Joins Dayman in having a time penalty next to their name. Still plenty of time left as that guy comes into the pits. AMS Fairley leads Ross by 1.1 seconds. SL O'Connor was over a second behind Ross, now is within 8 tenths. So maybe Ross has had a bit of oversteer somewhere. Mr. Wiggles doesn't have DRS on SL O'Connor as it stands. However, DRS will only be activated next time around. Prev looking very racy here. Wiggles wide into the hairpin. Prev a nice tighter line. The DRS of course, however, could still get a move done. Wiggles defends well, but goes wide again. A bit too deep on the brakes into the right-hander. Prev switches back and switches his place. Prev is now into fourth. Wiggles is dropping back. I wonder if Wiggles has got damage perhaps. A few times this lap he's gone a little bit too deep into corners, bit of understeer perhaps. AJ Sam, 3-second time penalty. Wiggles indeed does go into the pit, so probably some damage that we quite picked up on. And Prev already has a 2-second gap now on Kemmons, so Wiggles has held up this trio of Kemmons, Dayman and Dr. Edward. Here's the battle for second between Connor and Ross. Kemmons taking to the escape road. Side by side now with Dr. Edward, who I have to say that's a very well calculated move around the outside of the Williams there. Dr. Edward, very good overtake from his perspective. He's up into fifth, and we'll see if he can press on and maybe charge Prev out in front. Bit of a slide there, it looked like, for Dr. Edward. DRS is enabled. Edward won't get it, but Kemmons and Dayman will. But that Alpine is just a little bit too far in front of the Williams for Kemmons to make a move. Connor and Ross still having a fight. Maverick with a time penalty. Lap 9 of 31, we're already at 1/3 race distance. It's gone very quickly. Got Connor on the back of Ross, and we have Kemmons just staying within DRS range of Dr. Edward, although having said that, he just dropped out of it. A bit deep there into 14 was Connor. And he's fallen out of that 1 second window for DRS, and my goodness, the pace of Prev at the moment, he is catching SLR Connor very, very quickly, and maybe in a lap or two may have some DRS on the Mercedes car in front. Amos Fairley leads this race by 2.3 seconds, still plenty of laps left. Kemmons into the pits. AJ Sam with a time penalty. I'm sure Padge behind will be happy about that one. Padge is the only car right now who will have DRS on the track. The only one close enough to a car in front. Oh, and Sam! Oversteer out of turn 6. Into the barrier, out of the race. And out comes the virtual safety car. Updated very quickly by a full course safety car. So our second retirement of the evening. First it was Hyper, now it's AJ Sam. Safety car number 2 is out on track. Amos Fairley into the pits, as is Ross. Rev stays out. SL O'Connor comes in. Edward stays on track. Dayman is in. Maverick stays out. May expect Padge to I was going to say may expect Padge to stay out here, but he has come in. The Aston Martin, if that guy stays out. Clements pitted last lap, so doesn't need to this lap, but he has lost a bit of ground on his rivals. He should, so fingers crossed for that, but join us on Thursday and Sunday nights for some more racing at Singapore. Safety car is in, or coming in. Prev has backed up the field a little bit more than what Fairley did on his safety car restart. Safety car is now coming into the pit lane, which means Prev can go anytime he wants. That guy has a 5-second penalty for a collision with Clements. Prev has gone for it out the penultimate corner, and he's definitely caught the Alpine behind napping. Already a second off that safety car restart and trying to break that slipstream and maybe trying to get some heat into his tyres is Prev. Some good thinking there. Wiggles has passed Padge for 10th place. And it looks like Ross is perhaps ready to go for a move from our previous race leader, Fairley. Fairley goes defensive. Cuts off the angle. Ross cannot make a move. Ross definitely looking like at this portion of the race he has a lot more confidence in that car. Let's not forget they still are all bunched up, so Fairley is looking for a move on Maverick, but also trying to defend from Ross. Prev leads by 1.3 seconds. Edward has a 1.3 second lead over Maverick, who is defending hard from Fairley and Ross, Connor and that guy. Fairley down the inside. Oh, and a bit too late on the brakes maybe. Maybe some collision with the curb or with a tyre of Maverick. But Fairley has lost out on some ground here. SLR on a big wiggle. He ghosted there. Game maybe thought that he had a big accident. Mr. Wiggles, meanwhile, is getting past that guy who was lost out to Clements on the last corner as well. That guy fighting back, but overtaking off the track. Wiggles keeps the place through turn 3 and is now up to P7 after being 11th in safety car. So Wiggles is having a smashing restart from his perspective. Prev leads Edward by 1.6 seconds now. Ross is in third. Fairley has lost a bit of ground, as we said. SL O'Connor, due to his slight bit of oversteer, has lost the position to his teammate. That guy dropping back from Clements and Wiggles just slightly. Padge is on the back of Dayman for P9. Half race distance, still plenty of laps left. Anything can still happen. We could have more safety cars, we could have more overtakes, we could have more time penalties for all we know. True point from our race there. Interesting race now with people. I need 2-stop strategy. Bit wide there from Clements coming out the final corner. May have got a warning for that, which may equate to a time penalty. Fairley sits in the fastest lap of the race and gets past Ross into turn 1. We just saw that in the foreground. Had a lot of overspeed on Ross. Fairley retakes that place on the Alfa Romeo. And now SL O'Connor is on the back of Ross. Maybe Ross has some slight damage that's slowing him down a bit. Connor thinks about a move. Ross gives him the space on the inside of the apex. Connor definitely looking for a move, and Ross is dropping back here from Fairley, so I think Ross may have some damage that we don't know about. We haven't seen Ross lose this much time to Fairley all race, so there may be something amiss with that Alfa Romeo. But here comes Connor now down the inside, fully alongside, side by side now through the right-hander. Ross does well to stick it around the outside and keep his hands on P4. However, Ross does have a time penalty. Fairly in the foreground, you can see on the back of Dr. Edward, who's doing well to make sure Prev doesn't get away. The gap is still around 1.5 seconds, has been since the restart. So Dr. Edward showing good pace, as is Prev. However, we probably will expect to see the top two into the pits at some point. Connor now past Ross, DRS assistance down the main straight. Now Wiggles finds himself in a very familiar position directly behind the Alfa Romeo of Ross. We won't talk about what happened at Russia twice, but let's hope that it doesn't happen again. That guy in Padge now with time penalties, Fairly using DRS now to get past Dr. Edward up into second place. Padge is into the pits. Bit of a lock-up from Fairley. Or maybe it was Prev. Fairley finds himself right on the back of that Ferrari. 7 laps of tyre wear separate these top two drivers. SLR Connor is trying hard now to catch up to Dr. Edward. More that these three stay within close proximity gives Connor more of an opportunity to close in. Fairly now down the inside, side by side with the Ferrari. Carbon copy with what happened with Ross and Connor last lap. Although Prev does seem to be struggling on these tyres. I think they probably need to pit possibly around lap 21 or 22 if they want to make those soft tyres last the rest of the race. So they will have to stick it out a few more laps. However, Prev is going into the pits now, so I could have got that one wrong. We'll see what tyres Prev fits in a second. It's now a 3-way fight for the lead. Prev ditches those mediums, puts a new set of medium tyres on, so those tyres were suitably destroyed. Doesn't want to go onto the soft tyre. Doesn't want to risk losing any time on those old mediums. New set of mediums is his choice. SLR Connor now is past Edward and only a second away from his teammate. This is the battle for the lead. Mr. Wiggles is past Ross. And I think Ross may have some damage we don't know about. Maybe it's rear wing, maybe it's floor damage, side pod damage. Could be a bit of front wing damage, we just don't know. Based on what we've seen in the first 15 laps, I think something is wrong with that Alfa Romeo car. And now he finds himself trying to hold off that guy for P5. Mr. Wiggles, meanwhile, after an early pit stop, through some damage, finds himself on a beautiful recovery up to P4. Taking opportunity. Is just after this right-hander here, turn 4. And it looks like that guy's got a really good exit. Just took that corner a little bit better than Ross. Side by side, takes the extreme inside and is past Ross now. Runs a bit wide. May have got a warning for that. So there may still be hope for Ross to try and get past the Aston Martin. Dr. Edward has dropped off slightly by a couple of seconds from the two out in front. Wiggles is now closed up by a second. and takes that hairpin really well. He's got a good exit, he's close enough here. Didn't use any of his ERS, and that's why he wasn't quite close enough into the right-hander there. Essel O'Connor is still sticking with his teammate after both of them have made their way up to podium spots again. This is the closest fight on track. Wiggles pushing for a podium here. Dr. Edward, we are expecting to come into the pits, but he's doing a really good job at defending here from the Haas. Mr. Wiggles going for it, lunges down the inside. Edward tries to stick it around the outside of one. Has to slot in behind. Wiggles has got that move done. However, Dr. Edward will have DRS coming out of turn 4. Prev with the new fastest lap of the race. Wiggles defending. Puts his car in the right space. Blocks a move from Edward. But since then, Essel O'Connor has been driving very well to keep up with his teammate, who has looked very quick in qualifying. Dr. Edward pits from 4th, releases that guy to try and close up on Mr. Wiggles. The gap is 2.1 seconds now between 3rd and 4th places. Dr. Edward onto the hard tyre, and that is strange. You would expect him to go onto the softs, so maybe that was a mistake on the MFD. We've all been there. We've all done it. Perhaps we've just seen it happen once more. Anyway, Fairley and Connor lapping pretty much identically, but Fairley maybe a tenth or so quicker each lap than his teammate. Gap is up to 1.56 seconds. Mr. Wiggles is holding the last podium place. He's 8 seconds off of Connor in P2, but has a nice healthy 3-second gap on that guy. Maverick into the barrier. Maybe just losing a bit too much performance in that tyre. Braking late, struggling to stop the car, and he's got a puncture on his front left. And that might be the reason, although that could be caused by him hitting the barrier. Ross is into the pits now, and I expect he will go onto the hard tyre. Maverick letting Cummins through, very sporting of him. Maverick may get out in front of Padge here on the pit stops, but I have to wait and see. Ross, as expected, onto the soft tyre, probably going for a fastest lap and looking to hunt down some of the drivers that have overtaken him in this race. Prev, meanwhile, is the Flying Dutchman, has quickly eradicated that 2.5 second gap to Dayman, and AMS Fairley has pulled out a second over the last couple of laps on his teammate Connor. Gap is up now to 2.6 seconds. Wiggle has dropped back by another 5 seconds here, so maybe Wiggles is struggling, and he's into the pits, and I don't think he's got a front wing, you know, so I think Wiggles has had a bit of a mare. Oh, there's a safety car, that's why. And that guy has no front wing either. What has happened all of a sudden? 2 drivers have no front wing, and there's a safety car out. Well, that happened all of a sudden, and we weren't watching the right person to see how it happened. Anyways, Prev now finds himself in 3rd place. Oh, and finds himself out of the race. I spoke too soon. And Prev, trying to catch up with the top 2, has got a little bit of oversteer out of 3. And now finds himself out of this race. That is a big shock. And now, this has shaken everything up. Mr. Wiggles, Ross, that guy, Dayman, Maverick, Kemments, all on a new set of soft tyres. Dr. Edward now finds himself in P3 this lap. The top two leaders are predicted to pit too. They've got a free pit stop in hand. Although Connor probably could have stayed out and maybe taken a gamble on track position. They will double stack at Mercedes here, but Connor won't lose that much time. You can see him waiting a little bit there, but he has a big advantage behind to the Alpine. So, no, with all due respect, you may say commentator's cursed, but I didn't crash him. He drove the car. Dr. Edward pits. That releases Mr. Wiggles, and Ross will go through as well. Edward may stay out ahead of that guy if he's fortunate, or may drop behind the Aston Martin. Here comes Dr. Edward out of the pits now towards the end of the pit lane. I think that guy will get him. Maybe Dayman will miss out. No. Dayman gets Edward too. He's going to find himself a long way behind. The safety car has decided to come in this lap. It's a very late call, which means Fairley has to judge this spot on. It looks like Connor and Wiggles have had a bit of a jump out of the final corner on Fairley, but Fairley manages to stay ahead. It's going to be very close between the top 9 here. A lot of inside curb there for Wiggles. Very bold decision. I've seen drivers hit that inside curb at turn 3 and spin the car around, but no such fate for him. Wiggles is looking for a move on the Mercedes, looking to spoil the Mercedes 1-2. That guy now with a penalty, an additional time penalty. Starting places compared to where they are, Wiggles is up 2. That guy Dayman, 4 place gains. I think a bit of a corner cut there for Wiggles, so needs to keep it clean for the remaining 4 laps. Ross is exactly where he started, but has been thrown a lifeline compared to how his second stint went. Lost quite a few places, but now has an opportunity to get back on the podium. These two Mercedes at the moment sitting pretty. Even though they've got drivers breathing down their neck, they have no time penalties, which means even if Wiggles and Ross get past them, they're still going to jump ahead on time penalties. Oh, and Ross is round. Just saw it in the background. And he's lost a bit of time. Don't think he has too much damage to worry about, but he has lost a lot of track places. He's down to 9th. Could still fight back on Padge and Edward and Kemments. No DRS until lap 3 of the safety car restart. And it looks like Fairley wants to get out of that 1 second window. Wiggles is staying with Connor here. And a second of SL O'Connor. SL O'Connor, meanwhile, fighting to stay within a second of his teammate. There is a lot of pushing going on up and down the field. That could open the way for mistakes, could open the way for time penalties. As it stands, Dr. Edward is due to jump up a couple of places at the very minimum, with a clean race so far, and a really good final corner there from that guy. Mr. Wiggles has had a bit of a mare, and he's lost out on P3. That guy is currently holding the final points, final podium position, and with Wiggles 14 seconds of time penalties, that guy definitely looks like he's got one hand on a trophy this evening. Estelle O'Connor, meanwhile, is back within a second of his teammate, and Fairley has just got a 3-second time penalty. Fairley could have just thrown away an opportunity to win this Grand Prix here this evening. Estelle O'Connor doesn't need to overtake his teammate now. He can just sit back, stay within 3 seconds and keep his own race clean. If he gets a time penalty, then it throws the ball back into Fairley's courts. What will be back-to-back podiums for him in no assists. And currently, he is 5.5 seconds, and Wiggles is falling down the field. I think he had a bit of an incident at the end of the DRS straight. He's dropped to P9. This promotes Ross up to P6 now, who has got past Kemments this lap. A bit of oversteer from Connor into the wall a little bit. May have some slight damage to contend with now, but still finds himself in the net lead of this race once Fairley finishes with that 3-second time penalty. Very dramatic finish to this Singapore Grand Prix. Dr. Edward now is 5.3 seconds behind that guy. So if Dr. Edward can avoid losing a second in these next 2 laps, he will gain a podium from the hands of the Aston Martin driver, getting past Dayman. This releases the Alpine driver now, but a bit too late on the brakes. Bit of a lock-up. That's going to lose him some time. Ross, meanwhile, is on the back of these two, looking to fight back down the inside of the Singapore sling. Very bold move there, but Ross makes it work. Dr. Edwards' podium chances are diminishing, you'd have to think, with this big fight going on for P4. Now finds himself 7 seconds behind that guy, which means Dr. Edwards' podium chances may have just disappeared on the penultimate lap. However, Dr. Edward is still set to gain a place on Ross on time penalties. Estelle O'Connor, meanwhile, is still holding onto the back of his teammate. And as they start the final lap of the race, Estelle O'Connor is in a prime position now to take the race win. Padge with a 3-second time penalty, making his total up to 6. And that will hurt his chances of getting ahead of Kemments and Dayman. Although Kemments just picking up his 2nd time penalty of the evening. That brings Padge right back into the fight for 7th. Of course, both of those will get past Dayman, who has 9 seconds of penalties. So Dayman is due to drop a couple of places here. And Edward is due to jump ahead of Ross as it stands. Padge is now past Kemments on track, so nothing to worry about there for Padge. Could find himself in P6. Fairly starting to pull a gap now. 1.5 it is now. And I'll tell you what, if Connor has a bad last sector here, Fairley may find himself winning this race, even with that 3-second time penalty. We'll just have to wait and see. Very dramatic finish to the Singapore Grand Prix. There's still 2 more streams to come this week, so tune in for them. The gap is now 2 seconds. I think it might just be too late for Fairley. Oh, and I thought Connor cut the corner, and then a time penalty came up for Ross, and I thought the time penalty was for Connor, so I had a bit of a heartbreak moment there. But Estelle O'Connor does win this Grand Prix. Singapore victory goes to him. That guy finishes in P3 and will keep the podium ahead of Ross, who did finish ahead of Edward on track, but does drop behind on time penalties. Dayman will finish and take the checker flag in P7. Behind Padge. Kemments comes across the line to finish in 8th place. Mr. Wiggles had some good pace this race, but a couple of issues with his car, and the tough nature of the Singapore track has been costly for him. He finishes in 9th place and takes home a couple of points for the Haas team. Maverick finishes in 10th, taking the final point of the evening. So there you have it. In-game driver of the day is that guy for gains up the field. But it is SL O'Connor who takes the top spot of the podium away from his teammate due to a very late time penalty there from Fairley. The two Mercedes drivers, regardless of their finishing order, they will take max points away for the Mercedes team, further solidifying their case for constructors champions, and Fairley also taking the fastest lap, so maximum points for Mercedes here this